All right, everybody, ready to dive into something really interesting. Today, we're tackling something called Adaptability Quotient, or AQ for short. You've probably heard how the world is changing faster than ever, right? Well, this deep dive is going to equip you with what you need, not just to survive, but to really thrive in this crazy world that never stops changing. And, get this, the stuff we found will probably blow your mind. Did you know that only 1 in 4 employees actually has high AQ? Makes you think, huh. And it gets crazier. A whopping 90% of executives, yeah, you heard that right, 90%, they realize how important adaptability is for their companies. But here's the kicker. Only a tiny 5% think they've actually got it. That's a big gap, don't you think? And to top it all off, 40% of CEOs, the big bosses, they're actually worried that their companies won't even be around in 10 years if they don't adapt. So we're not just talking about staying ahead, we're talking about survival. But hey, don't worry, I'm not going to leave you hanging with all this doom and gloom. Let's bring in our expert who can tell us exactly why this AQ is so important in the world today.
Well, you see, the really interesting thing about AQ is that it's not just about, dealing with change. It's about actually using it to your advantage, really thriving in it. It's about taking those curveballs life throws at you and making them work for you. And the reason why it's so important right now is because of how crazy fast everything's changing. Experts say that the pace of change today is something like 3,000 times faster than in the past. 3,000 times. Can you believe that? So really, this isn't some far-off problem. This is about figuring out how to navigate the world today and making sure you've got a good future, both at work and in your personal life. And AQ, that's the key.
So it's like this hidden superpower that everyone wants but doesn't really know how to unlock. We hear all the time about IQ and EQ, but AQ seems like, I don't know, almost like this untapped potential. So what makes AQ different? What sets it apart from the usual suspects like IQ and EQ?
You've hit the nail on the head. See, IQ, that's your brain power, right? How smart you are.
Yeah.
And EQ, that helps you handle your emotions and relationships. But AQ, that's all about action, taking what you've got and running with it. It's about being resilient, being able to bounce back from anything. And it's about turning those challenges, those obstacles, into opportunities. Imagine you're trying to steer this rickety old boat down a rushing river, right? You could try to fight the current, stick to those old outdated maps, or you could learn to read the water, adjust your course, maybe even build yourself a better boat. That's AQ in action.
That is a perfect analogy. So it's not just about going with the flow, it's about learning how to ride those waves of change and coming out on top, right? That's brilliant.
Exactly.
And when we were doing our research, we discovered that AQ can actually be broken down into 5 main parts: cognitive flexibility, emotional resilience, growth mindset, learning agility, and openness to change. This really helped me get a handle on all the different sides of AQ. So why don't we break each of these down, starting with cognitive flexibility? What does that even mean?
Great place to start. Cognitive flexibility, that's like the foundation of AQ. Think of it as having the ability to update your brain as new information comes in. It's about not getting stuck in your old ways of thinking, even if they worked before. It's about being open to new information, new points of view, and being willing to change your mind when it makes sense.
Like hitting the refresh button in your brain, right?
Yeah.
Being willing to toss out the old script and start writing a new one.
Exactly. And just as important is emotional resilience. This is your ability to bounce back from setbacks, disappointments, even failures. Because let's face it, life isn't always smooth sailing, right? People with high AQ, they don't dwell on setbacks. They acknowledge them, sure, but then they figure out what went wrong, learn from it, and then, most importantly, they get back on track.
Makes sense. Letting every little thing get to you would be paralyzing. So where does this growth mindset come into play with AQ?
A growth mindset. It's all about believing in your own ability to learn and grow. It's about seeing challenges not as threats, but as opportunities to get better, to develop. People with a growth mindset, they're all about lifelong learning. They're not afraid to try new things, to stumble a bit, and to really take those experiences to heart. They don't see failure as the end, just feedback.
It's about always evolving, right? Who wants to be the same person 5 years from now?
Exactly. And learning agility, that goes right along with that. It's how quickly you can pick up new skills, new ways of doing things, new ways of thinking, especially with the world changing so fast. And sometimes that means unlearning old stuff to make room for the new, more effective stuff. Like you're constantly updating your mental toolkit.
So you're not just a fast learner, you're a smart unlearner too. Got it. Now, what about that last one, openness to change? That seems pretty straightforward, but I'm guessing there's more to it.
You bet there is. Openness to change, it's more than just accepting what's happening around you. It's about going out there and seeking new experiences, new perspectives. It's about being proactive, not just reacting. It's about being curious, wanting to explore the unknown.
I can see how all these different aspects kind of work together, but I'm curious, how does this actually play out in the workplace? Our research mentioned something called the AQ audit, which sounds really intriguing. What's that all about?
It's really important. You see, companies are starting to realize that AQ can really tell you a lot about how successful someone will be, both individually and on a team. It's a tool that helps companies figure out how adaptable their teams are as a whole.
So they're actually looking at how well someone can adapt when they're hiring them, not just their experience or what's on their resume. That's really smart.
It is. What's really interesting is that this audit actually identifies two different adaptability profiles. There's explore and transform, sometimes called disruptors, and then there's utilize and improve, or incrementalists.
So it's like having different players on a team, each with their own strengths.
Exactly. You need both kinds of thinkers to really innovate and be successful. Disruptors, they're all about shaking things up, challenging how things are done, coming up with those groundbreaking ideas. And incrementalists, they're fantastic at refining what's already there, making things more efficient, making sure everything runs smoothly.
So it's not about one being better than the other, but about finding the right mix of people for the team and the company's goals.
Precisely. And, you know, this makes me wonder, is AQ something we're born with, or can you actually get better at it over time? It's a question I'm sure a lot of our listeners are asking themselves.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is it even possible to boost your AQ, or are you stuck with what you've got? Please tell me there's hope.
Oh, there's definitely hope, don't worry. The good news is that AQ, it's not like, set in stone. It's a skill set. And just like any skill set, you can develop it, you can get better at it.
Okay, that's a relief. So how do we actually do that? Where do we even start? Are we talking like crash courses and embracing the chaos, or what?
It really begins with, taking a good look in the mirror. Think about your own strengths and weaknesses when it comes to this whole adaptability thing. Out of those 5 things we talked about, which ones come naturally to you and which ones, well, maybe need a bit of work?
So it's about finding those AQ blind spots, those areas where maybe we're a little too comfortable and we need to shake things up a bit.
Exactly. For example, let's say you're not the most cognitively flexible person, right? Make a real effort to see things from other people's perspectives, even if you don't agree with them at first. Get into some good debates, read stuff outside of your usual interests, expose your brain to new ways of thinking.
It's like what we're doing right now with this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
Getting out of our comfort zones and exploring all these new ideas and ways of doing things.
Exactly. And if you're someone who tends to take things hard, if emotional resilience is something you struggle with, try practicing mindfulness techniques. Things like meditation or journaling can be really helpful. They can help you understand and manage your emotions so you can bounce back faster when things get tough.
That reminds me, our research talked about the importance of a growth mindset, seeing challenges as opportunities instead of roadblocks. It's easy to get discouraged when things don't go our way, but what you're saying is that those setbacks can actually be our best teachers.
Absolutely. Being able to see failure as a chance to learn, that's huge for AQ.
Yeah.
Think about it. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, every time you try something new and it doesn't go perfectly, you're gathering valuable information. You're learning what works, what doesn't, and most importantly, you're building resilience.
So it's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But in this case, it's more like what doesn't kill you makes you more adaptable.
Exactly. And that's what's so great about AQ. It's not about dodging challenges altogether. It's about learning how to handle them like a pro. It's about coming out the other side stronger and more resilient, ready to tackle whatever comes next.
This is so relevant to the world we live in today. I mean, think about it. The job market, technology, everything's changing so fast. Being able to adapt isn't just a nice to have anymore, it's a need to have.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, I'd say that AQ is quickly becoming one of the most important indicators of success in the long run, both in your career and your personal life.
Makes you wonder if someday we'll be putting our AQ scores on our resumes right next to our GPA and skills.
Right. It's not impossible.
Yeah.
But even without a fancy score, there are still ways to show off your AQ in job interviews, performance reviews, even just in your everyday conversations with colleagues.
So how do we do that? How can we demonstrate our AQ without actually coming out and saying, hey, everyone, look at how adaptable I am?
There are definitely ways. One of those powerful things you can do is share stories about times you successfully dealt with change or learned from a mistake or showed flexibility in your thinking. Did you ever take on a project where you had to learn something new really quickly? Did you help your team navigate a tough transition? Those are the kinds of stories that really bring your AQ to life.
It's about showing, not just telling. I like that. So instead of just writing adaptability as a strength on your resume, you need to back it up with real-life examples.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to talk about times you messed up either. The key is to frame those experiences as learning opportunities and highlight how you adapted and grew as a result.
So it's not about pretending everything's perfect, right? It's about acknowledging when we mess up and showing that we learned something from it, turning those failures into stories about resilience and growth.
Exactly. It all comes back to that growth mindset we talked about.
Yeah.
And remember, this whole AQ thing, it's a journey. It's not like you reach some finish line and you're done. The world keeps changing, so you got to keep learning and growing with it.
It's like exercising a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. This deep dive has been amazing. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling fired up and ready to tackle whatever comes my way.
That's what I like to hear. And remember, in a world that can feel kind of crazy sometimes, your AQ is like your superpower. It helps you deal with uncertainty, turn those roadblocks into opportunities, and really thrive no matter what life throws at you.
This deep dive has been seriously insightful. So as we wrap things up, got one last thought-provoking question for our listeners to chew on. Something to keep those AQ muscles working.
Here's something to think about. Knowing what you know now about AQ, what's one small thing you can do today to become more adaptable? It could be as simple as trying to see a problem from a different angle, volunteering for a project that stretches you a bit, or even just taking 10 minutes a day to learn something new. Remember, it's those small, consistent changes over time that make all the difference.
It's a good reminder that we can all become more adaptable. It's about accepting that change is a part of life. And when we embrace adaptability, it's not just about surviving, it's about thriving no matter what the world throws at us. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AQ. Until next time, stay curious, stay adaptable, and keep on learning.